Welcome to the moon tonight. It is Wednesday, January 23rd, 2013, and welcome to a very, very chilly and more than chilly, cold, real cold, Terryville, Connecticut. I am imaging inside a warm shed right now, and outside the temperature is hovering around the single numbers, and we expect to go below zero tonight. The object I have on the screen right now, you can see, is Aristarchus, down lower in the right lower corner going towards the 5 o'clock position. Very interesting feature on the moon. Notice the very bright crater wall. That's a sign of a very, very young impact. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I have a little bit of zoom on this camera, not an awful lot, but I do have some. Let me see if we can center this a little better. Again, I am using my Skyview Pro mount, which is not quite the quality of my better Atlas mount, because as I said the other night, my Atlas mount just likes to freeze up in this kind of weather. It does not perform that well. So again, we're looking at the crater Aristarchus, and that is the crater up on top. Now notice just below, kind of between those two craters, and I've got to look over at the map because I've kind of lost track of the name of that other crater. I believe that other crater is, and I've got to just check myself. Yeah, it's let me see. Herodotus, crater Herodotus. But notice that snake-like valley in there. That is called Schroeder's Valley, and also called the Cobra Head. If you notice in there, there's a feature that looks like the head of the cobra at the end of that valley. This whole complex is in the floor of the Ocean Procellarum on the moon. We are quickly approaching a full moon. We're only a few days away, and so we've lost that real sharp terminator with a lot of detail on it, and we've got now more of the full moon look to the moon. In fact, if we go up here in this image a little bit, if I can get this mount to go the right way. You can see coming into the field of view, let me get this to go the right way, the area around Kepler, the crater Kepler, that is not Kepler. I've got to get over a little farther, I believe. I think it's over in here. And let me see, that kind of really gets blown out. Let me see if I can drop this gain down here a little bit. That's a bit better. Let's see, and I think, yes, I think I've got to go up some here. Yeah, and I believe here coming in from the bottom, yeah, this looks more familiar now, I believe. That crater there coming up from 6 o'clock towards center is Kepler. And look at that beautiful pattern around it. And now I've got to get the mount to go the other way. As you can see, it does not like to change directions real quick. I've got to let it sit on it here, and there we go. Got it back. Look at that beautiful spray pattern around it. That's caused by the impact back when that crater was formed. And if you watched my first video the other night, we talked about impacts and how those rays are formed and how the central peaks in those craters are formed. I don't think I have any more zoom. I can see if I got a little zoom. A little bit, not a lot. But you can see that crater does have a nice central peak. And we'll zoom around here a little bit more. The other night I mentioned that back in the 1830s and 1840s, and I'm just going to kind of zoom around here. I'm going to talk about a few early mappers of the moon, and there's not an awful lot of real sharp detail to look at tonight, but I will mention a few of more prominent things that come into view as we're going along here. And that particular crater right there, just above 6 o'clock, with a beautiful double central peak in it, and some ruined walls around the 6, 7, and 8 o'clock position on that crater, is the crater Cassendi. It's a beautiful crater. And let me see. If I'm not mistaken, that's Mare. Yeah, that's Mare Humorum. Just to the left of Cassendi is Mare Humorum. You don't have to forgive me if I kind of mess up on some of these names. I just started doing these live videos of the moon. I worked for years on deep sky objects, imaging galaxies, faint galaxies in the 13 to 15th magnitude range, very faint galaxies, and nebula and things like that. And I used to shun the moon. The moon used to be a real problem for me. It used to wash out my objects that I was trying to observe in the sky. So I haven't really done a lot of moon observing since way back in the 1950s and 1960s, when I was a youngster just getting started at 12 years old. I probably knew the moon much better then than I do now. But anyway, I mentioned in our last video that back around the 1830s, 1840s, there were men who mapped the moon. Back then, you wanted to do some work on the moon, you couldn't just go and get a map of the moon. You actually kind of had to make your own, because there really weren't that many published. Nice. We got some nice detail coming up in here. Let's just take a look at this for a second. I believe that dark ruined, that dark patch at about 6:30 position at the bottom, I believe that's the crater Chickard, I think, coming into view. The sun has not quite risen on it yet. And if you go, yes, over near 9 o'clock position, that long Egadic crater, that is the crater Schiller. But anyway, back in the 1830s, 1840s, these guys came along and they decided they were going to make moon maps. Well, they had to draw the moon. They couldn't go out and take a camera and snap pictures or do what I'm doing here and image the moon. And one of the best known of the day was Wilhelm Lohrmann. Wilhelm Lohrmann, 1796 to 1840. And he completed a map 38 inches in diameter, which back in that day was huge. He worked from his rooftop. He had no observatory, and he actually had his telescope under a couple of planks, which he used to move out of the way and go about his observing. He published 4 out of what he thought were going to be 25 sections of the moon. Had many others ready, but he died at a very young age. He died at the age of 44, and he died before the atlas was completed. Others came along and completed his work, but his was the first real true atlas of the moon, based on real measurement points, so that the positions that he had were not just hand-drawn by eye. There were some anchor points to him, which made it very accurate. Another observer from that period was a Julius Schmidt, 1825 to 1884. He was a man of many talents, and we're getting into a section of the moon where it's really blowing away. So let me take a few seconds here and turn down this gain a little bit. Oh, we're right on the crater Tycho. Look at that. Tycho. And if we could really back out in that, which we can't with the eyepiece, I'm using a 15mm eyepiece, by the way, you would see a beautiful ray pattern, which extends for long, hundreds and hundreds of, probably even thousands of miles on the moon. And if we get a chance here, we might be able to follow that one ray pattern a little farther up. But anyway, Julius Schmidt, he was very interested in Jupiter, the other planets, and he worked basically with a 6-inch refractor in Germany. Eventually moved on to Greece and ran an observatory there and completed his map there. These two men basically worked, well, fairly close to the same time, without any incidents between them. The story that I find interesting in history, though, are two observers, and let's kind of continue our survey along the moon here as I do this. I gotta just remember which way I want to go here. This mount, as I say again, is not the friendliest to move around with. Here we're getting into an area of the moon now which is really in high sunlight and very low relief, and we're not going to see a lot of detail here, but we'll keep moving around the moon. What you can notice, though, is those whitish patches. Those are small craters, and a very high sun angle that we've got now, they appear as white blotches on the moon. But going back to our mappers, my favorite was a Johann Krieger, 1865 to 1902. And there was another fellow that came out around the same time by the name of Philip Falth. Now these two guys, I don't think Krieger really cared. He didn't say too much, but old Philip Falth could not stand Krieger's work. He thought that in ways, oh, look at that, that's a nice view. Look at that Mar on the edge of the moon, on the way around the other side. That would never get turned very much directly to Earth, and we get a very foreshortened look at that. But look at that, that's beautiful. But Krieger didn't care. He did his work, and without too much concern for anybody else. He worked with a 10.5-inch telescope, but he found that after observing for a short period of time that his eye was dazzled by the light from a 10-inch, and he used to stop the telescope down. I hate to even come off this view. This view is just beautiful. And he used to stop his telescope down to 6.5 inches to make his maps. Now, he had adopted a technique which nobody else did, and I'm surprised even that later on that amateurs in the 1920s, 1930s area of time did not pick up his technique, because it really produced beautiful results. What he did is, in his time, as I say, he was born in 1865, photography was just starting to be used. And I'll start our little survey here again a little bit as I continue talking. We'll go off that beautiful spot. And what he did was take, oh, there's some beautiful impact sites. Look at those white splashes there. They're gorgeous. I got a little too much, probably too little much gain there. There, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. He took low contrast prints from Lick Observatory and also Paris, and took them to the telescope. They were very low contrast, low quality. Back then photography was not that good, and you could see much more with your eye than you could with photography. But he would take these low contrast prints, go to the telescope, and then add with pencil and pen the very fine detail that he could see with his eye to the print. Now he would go back night after night, 3, 4, 5 nights sometimes, to the same crater, trying to get it at about the same throw of the moon, throw of the sun angle on the crater, and draw them in. And each night that he would go out, he would use a different color. When he was done, he would then take another print and take all the nights that all that work he did on all those nights, and combine it all, and then put it on a final print. And I have seen some of those prints, and they're outstanding. I mean, you can't even describe them. They take on a very natural look, but yet with the fine detail of a real good observer. The maps were absolutely beautiful, and they were kind of the rage of the day. And our old friend Philip Falth, although he was a tremendous observer himself, I'm not sure, I'm trying to look back here, I'm not sure what size telescope he used for a lot of his work. I know he lived from 1867 to 1941, so he lived well into the 1900s. But he although he drew with tremendous amount of detail, he was very jealous of Krieger's work. Here's another nice view. Look at those small craters out on that Mars floor there. The full moon time does have its own beauty. You may not have the tremendous higher mountains in the southern part of the moon with a tremendous shadow throw on it at this time, but the moon near full has a beauty of its own. You can just see those splashes there. But Krieger was very, very jealous, and he was afraid that, I'm sorry, not Krieger, but Falth was very, very jealous of Krieger's work. And he would talk down Krieger. He would claim and try to show with his charts that he could see much, much more detail than Krieger could, and would produce prints showing that, here, I drew this area of the moon, and look, I've used a smaller telescope, and I show more detail. So there was a real battle going there, but that was mostly on Falth's part. Krieger could have cared less, and he just went about his work. But both Lorriman and Krieger died very young, and it seemed to be, it just seemed to be something that went with the trade. Dying young, taking on that type of work. Here we are coming on Mare Crisium. Let's see if I can bring this up a little bit, because there is a very nice feature I'd like to show you while we're here. That big round flat area is Mare Crisium, and there at the bottom, notice that crater with a white ring crater and that spray pattern that goes out, and then there's a, and I gotta get the mount to stop naturally, there we go, and it's got that sprayed pattern that goes out, and on one side it's kind of like there's nothing on the other side over here on the 7 o'clock side. So that impact was a very, very low impact, and you can see spray out onto the floor of Mare Crisium, and that was from that impact. By the way, that crater is Proculus. And I kind of forgot where I was in my story about Falth and Krieger, but anyway, Falth was very jealous, and he had some very, very strange ideas. He took on this idea, and I don't even know where it came from. You'd have to research it, but he actually thought the moon was covered in ice to a depth of about 140 miles. And stop and think about that. We're looking at the moon right here now with Proculus Crisium with the sun high up. Temperatures right down there now are probably over 200 and some degrees on the surface Fahrenheit. So I don't think ice would last too long under those conditions. But anyway, he believed the ice was covering the surface of the moon. It was 140 miles deep. That the moon was actually spiraling in towards the Earth and was going to collide with the Earth and cause another ice age. And he actually thought that this had happened numerous times in the past. He had some very, very strange ideas, and he tried to keep them out of his astronomical work, but a lot of it did leak in. But if you could take the time to study the history of these earlier mappers, it's really quite interesting. Okay, we'll continue on a little bit. I'm already starting to see I'm running a little longer than I thought I would be. Time goes a little faster than I thought. Moving around here, see what else we can find before we get back to the Aristarchus area where I started from. Let's see. Again, there's some nice whitish patches from impacts. Let's grab pretty good. Let's move down this way. I don't think. Having a little trouble with the mount here. This mount is it's really tough to control. It has a lot of backlash in the gears. Until I can get control of it here. It's moving. Right now, believe it or not, I'm trying to get it to go down, and it's drift. There we go. I got control of it again. That's how much backlash is in those gears, and I want it to go now the other way. Of course, this temperature outside could have a lot to do with it. Like I say, we're down in the single numbers, and it's going below zero here tonight. So that telescope is probably not too happy outside by itself right now. Luckily, I've got my son's shed here at his garage that we're using and keeping it heated, and he actually shut the heat off a few minutes ago, and it's starting to actually cool down here quite a bit in here, but we'll have it back on shortly. There's the crater Plato, that flat-floored crater over there, and that is Mare Frigoris, that long flat plain there next to Plato. And now we're coming into another area on the North Pole. This is the North Pole area of the moon, and I want to try to identify this crater right here. See that crater over here near 4 or 5 o'clock? I think I identified that earlier when I was looking around, and I believe that crater is, yes, Herschel J. If this map is correct, it's that large crater. There seems to be a crater pit right in the middle of it, and very low walls around the crater. Let's see what happens if we zoom out a little bit. No, that's not going to help us. Let me get the exposure up a little bit. We get into a little darker area. There we go. It's better. I'll continue going on down here, and I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick. We're getting a little longer than I really wanted to go, and that's not the way I want to go. And then we got the moon wanting to drift out of the field again. Boy, I'll be looking forward to the warm weather when I can get back to use my Atlas mount. It's a much easier mount to control. Okay, that U-shaped area right there is Sinus Iridium. A very interesting feature on the moon. You can see that discoloration on the floor again. That's all from impact and debris being thrown up on the floor. Those Mare. That blue up there, that's interesting, but some of that, as you fool with the color, if we drop the color down, see it kind of blends in, it looks a little better. And if I go back and increase the color intensity, watch what happens. See that red there and that dark blue up on top. That's not the real moon colors. I mean, some people say, yeah, there's a lot of color in the moon, and they're lying to you. That's not really the case. These cameras tend to get fooled, and the optical path in these telescopes tend to cause their own problems with a bright moon. So let's drop this color down and get it a little more natural looking. And I think we better get ready to wrap this up. After we had a pretty good trip around the moon, there's the crater Copernicus up on top, really washed out, high overhead. That was a crater that just the other night, if you watched my first video, was that huge crater that was just on the terminator and just coming into view. Notice all the small little craters around it and the small mountain ranges. Fantastic area in the moon. But I think we've gone long enough here for tonight. Thank you for watching. I hope maybe we'll get one more video in on this cycle of the moon, and then it goes past full, and we're going to have to wait until mid-February because of where this building's located and the tree line problem I have. But anyway, thanks for watching. Clear skies, good health, and we'll see you next time, guys.